Hello, everyone, and welcome to Professor Davis Says, where we correct the narrative. Now, this first topic we're going to be talking about, and like all these topics, we address social and historical issues to educate and to motivate. Okay, we want to help motivate and educate you. Now, again, our first topic comes from the Unburied Truth series, hashtag Unburied Truth. Now, for those who don't know, you're saying, what's the Unburied Truth series? Okay, Unburied Truth is what I call MIA. And so when you look up the term MIA for the 20th century, you see missing in action. But for the 21st century, MIA, as it relates to minorities of color in this country, in particular African American history, it's marginalized, ignored, and avoided. That's what MIA stands for. Again, hashtag MIA, marginalized, ignored, and avoided. And that's what most of this history is. So we have to come in, okay, as scholars, as doers, we come in and we unbury that truth or those truths. We unbury, we excavate, we dig up the truth. And so that's what this channel is going to be all about, unburying these truths is the first segue into this under Professor Davis Says, okay? So moving forward, the first topic we're going to be talking about under the Unburied Truth series is African Americans before slavery. So, of course, many Americans in this country, many people globally speaking, okay, in particular, many African Americans, all right, even myself, 20 years ago, when I was asked the history of African Americans in this country, oh, well, we were slaves. And so, again, that narrative has to change. It needs to be corrected. And that's where we jump in. That's where we come in. That's where we empower. That's where we educate. That's where we motivate. Okay, so again, Unburied Truth, that first one, when it comes to African Americans before slavery, the first truth I will give you and we will talk about is Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue in 1492, who never came to America, by the way. Again, this European conquistador, this explorer, he even wrote in his logbook that Africans, that dark-skinned people, were here with their gold spear tips before he got here. So again, that's just one historical marker to prove that Africans were here before Europeans were here, before Native Americans were here, before Asians got here. Okay, and so again, there's another scholar by the name of Dr. Lee Jin. He's a geneticist, and he published, and he talked about how the heritage of humans come from Africa, and of course, how Africans migrated through, the Atlantic Ocean to come to the Western Hemisphere, and some were already here. Okay, so again, that's another conversation. The other point that we will note and we will talk about later on under the Unburied Truth series we're going to be talking about is the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, again, many years ago, I was told, and it was published many times, physically, verbally, that what freed slaves was the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, so again, we have to, correct the narrative, y'all, because, again, the Emancipation Proclamation, quote, I'm going to quote Dr. Lawrence Gardner, my old professor of history at Louisiana, at Grambling State University in Louisiana. He said they didn't free, this document didn't free a, quote, a cotton picking slave, and it didn't, okay? Out of the 4 million slaves that were in prison chattel, that were colonialized, that were institutionalized, held against their will, were Africans or African Americans rather, maybe roughly 50,000 were given freedom after this document, but the overwhelming majority were still slaves. And of course, getting back to the actual truth of the matter is that the Northerners, all right, the Union soldiers in their army and their forces came to the South, knocked on Southerners' doors. The Southerners responded, opened up the door with their shotguns and their Bibles. Hey, we're not going to free any slaves. They belong to us. They're our property. So again, definitely, we know the Civil War was generally about the freedom of states' rights, but more importantly about slavery. And so again, Unburied Truth series, we will address that moving forward. The next one we're going to be talking about is relevant to the last one, and that's right, the 13th Amendment. Okay, many of us think that we know all about the 13th Amendment, or some people compare and contrast the Emancipation Proclamation with the 13th Amendment. Okay, and so the 13th Amendment we talk about how, and we read about how in 1865, December, you know, slavery was eradicated. We got that. We know that. That's what it says in history books. But you have to get you a U.S. Constitution and look at number 13 of the U.S. Constitution thoroughly and read it for yourself verbatim. And you will see, okay, you will see that it says you're only free until you become a prisoner or wrapped up until the industrialized prison complex. Because once you become state property again, you become a slave again. So again, slavery was never eradicated. It was just amended, okay? All right? Everybody say amended. Right. So again, it was amended. So we're going to have that conversation moving forward. So when people bring me in, that's what I talk about thoroughly. We talk about the 13th Amendment. And finally, under the Unburied Truth series, the last one, and again, hashtag Unburied Truth. Under this Unburied Truth series, we're going to be talking about African American jockeys blackout. Okay? Why do we say African American jockeys blackout? When you hear the term jockey, you think about the Kentucky Derby, you think about the Freakness, you think about the Belmont Stakes. These are the three biggest horse races in this country, and it's a big complex. But what many people don't know, that in the 1890s, all right, those first jockeys in this country's history were men that looked like me, were African American. And again, this is again an unburied truth. This information is MIA. Most Americans, in particular young people that are millennials, persons my age, Generation X, are baby boomers, my parents' age. They don't know about this. They're not exposed to it. But again, that's where this channel comes in at. We will empower you. We will educate. We will motivate you to find more issues to talk about, and of course to empower you with this information. So again, back in the 1890s, the overwhelming majority of these jockeys were African American men. And of course, just 30 years removed from physical slavery, when slaves, physical chattel, colonialized slaves in this country were on horses and working for free for hundreds of years, who would you think would be better on the back of a horse, 25 years later, when a lot of money is at stake? You put your former slaves' children on the back of those horses. And so again, this is the only sport in American history where, the only sport in American history where you have African Americans starting off in this sport, pioneering this sport, leading the trailblazing with this sport. And now it's pretty much hard to find an African American jockey, as again the sport has been over encompassed, generations ago by Caucasian/European Americans, and now of the last 30 or 40 years, it's with our Hispanic and Latino American brothers, etc., who are doing a fine job, by the way, as well. So again, under the Unburied Truth series, we will talk about these issues moving forward. Okay, so again, but before we sign out for today, remember, make sure that you subscribe so this channel can thrive. Make sure that you hit thumbs up and keep your head up. Make sure that you share if you care about this channel. And again, the name of this channel is Professor Davis Says, all right, where we empower you, where we correct the narrative as it relates to social and historical issues to educate and motivate you. Okay, and so again, I'm Edmund Davis. Stay tuned for the next. And remember, Professor Davis Says, God bless.